something that we do here on the Ignition News, which is connecting the dots. Connected two dots in a story, as well as something else that happened late last night that I think tell us everything we need to know about where exactly this administration is going. This is no time to be afraid, but it is time to be aware. So, welcome to the Ignition News. We are recording live on several platforms right now. We're on streaming live on our studio, we're on Spotify, we're also on YouTube, Twitch, occasionally on Rumble, we're also on Substack. We're back on Instagram for a little bit at least, and of course on TikTok. But I do need to quickly ask you to go ahead and follow the show on your favorite podcast platform, whether that's Spotify, Apple Music, or Apple Podcasts, Substack, or YouTube has podcasts as well, which I appreciate. So do follow there because what we're seeing is this gradual sort of takedown of the media, and actually that is exactly what we're going to talk about today. But let me start it off with a little bit of lightness today, and then I do want to apologize if you're watching the show live. I'm getting old, and I got out of the car. I was in a car accident like 2 years ago. My neck is. Who is calling me during the show? Find them. Anyways, I got out of the car wrong last night, and well, I'm stiff. So, anyways, before we get into the heavy news, and there is heavy news today, I do want to tell you some things because it weaves in why the significance of today's date. We don't always think about the significance of dates, but it really centers the tension between government secrecy and the public's right to know. Today is National Freedom of Information Day. Weird. That's kind of interesting, isn't it? It's also the birthday of James Madison, and it coincides with Sunshine Week. Put a little bit of sunshine into the truth. It's Black Press Day, commemorating the 1827 foundation of the Freedom's Journal, the first African-American owned and operated newspaper in the entire United States. It's National Panda Day, and Everything You Do Is Right Day. It's a lighthearted contrast to the heavy nature of what we're going to talk about today. It is the birthday of James Madison. The first liquid-fueled rocket was launched today. And then 40 years later, we launched the Gemini. So in 40 years, we went from the first liquid-fueled rocket to launching Gemini. And in 1995, Mississippi ratified the 13th Amendment. It was a delayed and symbolic move where Mississippi formally ratified the amendment abolishing slavery. Think about that. That was in 1995. History does indeed have a long arc. So welcome everyone to the Ignition News. Let me get started with the most serious information and the most serious story. Thank you for following us live. If you want to find us on all of your favorite platforms, just go to theignition.news. So on Friday, 8 people were convicted of terrorism in federal court. Good luck, TikTok. None of them shot anyone. The person who did, in fact, pull the trigger was also convicted separately of attempted murder. Of course, that makes sense, but I want to walk you through why their convictions are a massive threat. On the night of July 4th, 2025, a group showed up at the Prairieland ICE detention facility in Alvarado, Texas. One of them did, in fact, bring a firearm. When a police officer arrived on the scene, he did yell and he opened fire. He did shoot the officer. The officer was shot in the neck. To be clear, the officer did survive that incident. And of course, my lawyers would remind you that on the Ignition News, we do not support or condone acts of violence. He was convicted of attempted murder, but that is not what we're talking about today. The other 8 people who were there at that protest did not shoot anyone. What the evidence did show was that they were part of a group where that action was planned in advance. They attended a gear check where Mr. Song told them about plans to wear dark clothing. They turned off their phones or put them in Faraday bags. Some of them had their fingerprints on items that were later recovered at the scene. They were convicted of riot, conspiracy to use explosives, explosive shot during a riot, and providing material support to terrorists. Now they can face up to 60 years in federal prison. Now, let me be very clear here. Shooting a police officer is something that he should well have been convicted for. And that kind of action and behavior does not help the movement of liberation because precisely, it is now allowing the government to do exactly what they always wanted to do, which is to create a terrorist organization called Antifa. And for all of those little people out there who say Antifa is not an organization, it's a political ideology. Well, guess what? The government has created the political organization called Antifa. It is now Antifa. And guess what? They can decide who's in it. And why do we say this? Well, because the material support for terrorism charge does not require you to commit violence. It doesn't require you to plan violence. Under the framework the government used in this case, it is required that your participation in the group's activity, your presence, your preparation, your coordination provided support to the person who ultimately did commit the violence, even if you did not know that the violence was coming. Some of the defendants here, they thought they were going to a noise demonstration. They thought they were going to a solidarity protest outside of a detention facility. How many of you have gone to a protest in the last year? The government argued that planning the chats, the coordinated information, the collective preparation, and the fact that they wore black together made them terrorists. And let's not be mistaken. This is an Antifa trial. The government secured its first Antifa convictions. That is what happened. The terrorism charges were successfully convicted in court. It did not require proof of any membership in any organization. They did not say, oh, we're Antifa. There is no domestic equivalent to the State Department's terrorist list because of the First Amendment. Why this is important. The protest happened on July 4th. The president, we're going to talk about this now. The president signed NSPM 7. Do you remember this? NSPM 7 on September 25th, or sorry, September 2025. So what happened was, after they arrested these people, the government went back after the memo, and then they charged them as terrorists. They retroactively charged them as terrorists. And of course, Kash Patel himself called this the first time a material support for terrorism charge had ever been used against Antifa members. That is proof of concept. They are proving that they can charge you with being Antifa simply for being at a situation where something occurs. It is very common in protests to have agent provocateurs. It is very common in protests to have MAGA or to have fucking feds do shit and cause and start violence. And so now imagine you're at a protest and an agent provocateur or a fed says, throw a brick. And you never thought you were going to be involved in any of that. You didn't do any of that. You did no violence. You were standing there and you were saying, don't do violence. You pointed at the provocateur. But guess what? You signed up on the No Kings email list to go to the protest that day. Guess what you are now? You're fucking Antifa. The whole purpose of this is to designate everyone as Antifa if you don't agree with the president. Over on TikTok right now, I haven't been paying attention, but we apparently have people who are supportive of this. People who think that this is a good idea. Well, let me tell you what happens. When the shoe is on the other foot, the government will come for you, my friend. They will. Pam Bondi said, I'm quoting her directly, today's verdict on terrorism charges will not be the last. The Trump administration systemically dismantles Antifa and finally halts their violence across America's streets. This is 1984 George Orwell. It's happening now. The government has created the designation Antifa. Anyone who tells you, oh, Antifa is not an organization. The government has made it an organization. They have secured their first conviction in a federal court. This is proof of concept. A judge in another case, in another state, in another city will be able to use this federal charge as proof of concept, of precedent. And we have now entered the era of the Antifa trials. Mark my words, we have entered the era of the Antifa trials. So, where does this connect? What dots do we connect for you now? Well, let me connect the dot for you right now. As the government is beginning its Antifa trials, so too is the President of the United States openly calling for the death of journalists. In a late night rant, the President of the United States called for journalists who covered his war to be tried with and convicted of treason. Treason is punishable by death in the United States of America. Last night, the president went on a nearly 400-word rant on Truth Social in which he suggested that media outlets covering his war in Iran, and it is his war now, and I am quoting him directly, brought up on charges for treason for the dissemination of false information. What happens every time the president uses Truth Social to tell Pam Bondi what to do? Pam Bondi does that thing. And now Kristi Noem has proven that when you don't do what the president wants, or that you embarrass the president, as the media coverage is embarrassing the president, when you embarrass the president or you allow the president to be embarrassed, he will fire you. So now Pam Bondi has to make a decision. Is she going to allow the president's failed war to embarrass the president, or is she going to start charging journalists with treason? The specific report that set him off was a Wall Street Journal story about 5 U.S. Air Force refueling planes being struck and damaged at a Saudi airbase during an Iranian missile attack. Trump called it false reporting. The president is lying to you about damage to your military equipment in real time. He also raged about an AI-generated video that showed the USS Abraham Lincoln on fire, claiming it was distributed by, quote, corrupt media outlets. AFP had already, in fact-checked the video and confirmed that it was fabricated. The video was Iranian propaganda. The media did not distribute it. They debunked it. And of course, just days ago, Brendan Carr said that he would begin looking at pulling licenses of media outlets who are not favorably reporting the war. These are not separate events. Trump also asked a female reporter, he told a female reporter on Air Force One yesterday, I am quoting him now, I don't talk to people like you about that. He then refused to acknowledge a question about the 6 service members who had just died. When asked if he had any comment on fallen troops, he responded by calling on someone else. So if you go to war for this president, for his war for Israel, he will not even dignify your service, let alone acknowledge and honor your death. If you or your brother or your sister or your mother or your father dies in Iran or over the skies of Iraq, this president won't even acknowledge that it happened, let alone the tremendous service that you, your family. I talk a lot about the connectivity that we all share. Everyone has a little story. Everyone has something that happens to them, and you multiply that by 365 days a year, 24 hours a day. You live to be 27 years old or 42 years old, or you live to be 36 years old. And one day, you're serving, representing, protecting your family back in the United States, Kentucky, Alabama, Texas, Las Vegas. They're proud of you. Your mother has a flag, has a picture of you in your uniform above the fireplace in Alabama. She's worried about you. But this president won't even acknowledge service members when they die. This is what happens during the fall of an empire. This is the collective tissue, the dots have been connected. The United States government has successfully deployed Antifa trials. They have successfully said in court, going to a protest where violence happens, even if you did not believe there would be violence, know there would be violence, plan the violence, participate in the violence, you are now Antifa. The president has said if you are a journalist truthfully reporting on the war that embarrasses him, you should be charged with treason. The maximum penalty for treason in the United States is death. Brendan Carr has said that if journalists don't report on the news the way he wants, he will consider taking their licenses. And when the president has to acknowledge that Americans have died in the campaign in Iran, he says, next question. Welcome to the Ignition News, everyone. I'm so glad that you're here. Today is March 16th. We have a lot of heavy stories, but the most important story today is that we have entered the era of the fake Antifa trials. Throughout history, throughout time, this is what happens when empires begin to collapse. They make the citizens of their country to enemies. They punish them, and they do everything in their power to silence the truth. In Israel, as someone correctly points out over here on Instagram, they do not allow journalists to report on what is happening in Gaza. They shoot them when they do. I should have prepared and come to the show today with an up-to-date number of the number of journalists killed reporting on the conflict in Gaza. The last time I checked, it was 285. But it's likely more. On that subject, welcome to the Ignition News. My next segment, an NBC news poll today has numbers that deserve serious attention. The Democratic Party needs to wake up and understand where this country has moved, but more importantly, where the rest of this country, which has morality, I don't know if someone's able to look up that number. I think that would be appreciated. Maybe someone on TikTok could look that number up for me. How many journalists have been killed in Gaza? I think it's important to bring that up for this segment. More registered voters now view Israel negatively than positively. This is a complete reversal from a few years ago. Back in 2013, the split was 45% sympathizing with Israelis versus 13% with Palestinians. Today is 39-40. It's essentially tied, with Palestinians now leading by a point. Among Democrats, the shift is dramatic. Positive views of Israel among Democrats dropped from 34% in 2023 to 13% in 2026. Nearly 60% of Democrats now view Israel negatively. 2/3 of Democrats say their sympathies lie more with Palestinians. This is a 180-degree complete reversal from where we were a decade ago. Among independents, positive views of Israel dropped from 40% to 21%. Negative views among independents jumped from 22% to 48%. This shift is reshaping the Democratic primaries in real time. In New Jersey, a pro-Israel super PAC spent more than $2 million to cut down a moderate candidate, and it backfired. Progressive challengers are now running explicit campaigns on the issue and are winning or nearly winning races they were not supposed to be competitive in. The Democratic Party is heading into November with the wind on its back at virtually every issue, but the national leadership of the party refuses to acknowledge this issue. The establishment wing of the party is still funded heavily by pro-Israel donors and, of course, by AIPAC. The tension exists. It is not resolved. It is sharpening. And candidates are now being tested in real time and are being forced to take clear positions. The poll surveyed nearly 1,000 voters, by the way. This number predated the conflict with Iran. which means by now, obviously, given that Iran has been a central tension point, and that we know because of Marco Rubio that the reason that we engaged in this conflict was because Israel apparently told us they were going to do it anyway. What's interesting about this is we also learned from Secretary of State Blinken that they tried this before. They tried this with Obama, and they tried this with Biden. The same thing. We're going to go with or without you. Obama said no, and Biden said no. It seems the difference to me, if I could point out one thing, what was the main and chief difference? What is the difference? Biden's not in the Epstein list, is he? The files. He's not named as an accuser. Barack Obama is also not named in the Epstein files, credibly accused of anything involving children. It seems to me those who are most assuaged and persuaded have a precarious connection to the Epstein files. Did we go to war not just to distract from the Epstein files, but specifically because of an extortion attempt because of the Epstein files? If you would have said something like this 10 years ago, people would have been making you a tinfoil hat out of Reynolds wrap from their cabinet. Personally, here's your tinfoil hat. These are now credible questions. These are now real, open questions that we need answers to. Our military bases are being obliterated in real time. Billions of dollars of infrastructure has been destroyed, and now we're learning, as we've discussed before, that we are rapidly depleting these interceptors at a rate which is impossible to counter. And what happens next? Well, what happens next is already happening, which is that we have been forced to move interceptors out of the region protecting Taiwan. But China has strengthened its forces around Taiwan. You couldn't imagine a better scenario if you were Russia or if you were China than what is happening right now. We have set the stage for a complete collapse of the American military empire. Right now, by the Straits of Hormuz, the president is demanding allies come to the military's assistance to militarily protect the Straits of Hormuz. All of the allies are saying no. No one is coming to protect the Straits because they know that it is fish in a barrel. No one wants to put a $5 billion warship within range of the Iranian military. It's stupid. No commercial ship wants to be made into propaganda flaming in the middle of the Straits. Each one of these ships has people who have families, loved ones, people that care about them. Would you go on an oil tanker through the Straits of Hormuz right now? How much would you have to be paid? And while the Straits of Hormuz are being closed, the president has announced his next target. Trump was asked about ongoing talks with Cuba. Here's what he said. Cuba's a failed nation. Cuba also wants to make a deal, and I think we will pretty soon either make a deal or do whatever we have to do. Do whatever we have to do. The United States actively conducting a war in the Middle East. The president is considering now, apparently, Cuba. CNN's Dana Bash on Cuba asked him about this. He told her that he thinks it's going to fall pretty soon. He said that without being asked, by the way. He pivoted to Cuba without being asked about Cuba. How do you distract from the Epstein files? You go to war with Iran. When the war with Iran starts to fail, how do you distract on the failing war in Iran? You go to war with Cuba. The United States military has launched a brand new weapon, a brand new ship in this conflict in Venezuela, in Iran, and now apparently in Cuba. It's a brand new ship, the United States censorship. We are being prevented from having essential information that we need to know about our brothers and sisters who wear the uniform, about our security, about our economy, about inflation, about the cost of gas. $5 per gallon here where I live in Las Vegas. It is just getting higher and higher every day. Benjamin Netanyahu is apparently spending more time in the air than he is on the ground. When this happened, he fled to Germany. His family safely drinking coffee from a balcony in Miami. I think you've probably seen the picture. He's safe. Your brothers, your sisters, for a needless, pointless war of aggression. A war we were tricked into, a war that every other president could see the writing on the wall and could say no. And now the Democratic Party has to make a choice. I mean, if you ask me, they've already made the choice. Because what's very clear is the people with a morality, the people with the sense of understanding can look at what happened in Gaza, can look at the ongoing and new genocide which is happening in Iran, can look at it and begin to fairly question this partnership with Israel, a country of 9 million people. And let me just be very clear here, because I'm sure the comments are going to come in now on being anti-Semitic. Israel is a state of 9 million people. We are a country of 350 million people. Israel is what you would call a client state. This has nothing to do with the Jewish religion. I am not attacking Jewish individuals. We are talking about countries, borders, and states. The country of Israel is 9 million people. They are renting our military without ostensibly paying for it, by the way. They got a coupon. Buy one, get one coupon. Invade Iran and get the US military for free. Limited time offer. Limited time deal. We have been dog walked into a war by a country of 9 million people whose primary goal is expansion. Our own diplomat, Mike Huckabee, our ambassador to the country of Israel, ostensibly said that Israel should have almost all of the land in the Middle East, all of the land to which it was biblically promised. They went into Lebanon. They raided Lebanon. They took territory. They carpet bombed Gaza to turn it into some techno city with beachfront property. It seemed like a joke at the time when the president said they were going to turn it into premium real estate. It was no joke. I don't care what happens. I'm in this point where I understand that the attacks will come no matter what. They will say you're being anti-Semitic. What have I said? What have I said? I've said that the Democratic Party base very clearly says we have to stop this. They've said we've had enough. We want to actually have our politicians representing us, not representing the needs of a client state. If you live in America and you're Jewish, you're of course welcome here. Your representative, though, is a representative of the country, the government of America, the United States of America. Your congressperson here, whether you're Jewish, Muslim, Christian, no faith, atheist, agnostic, your Congress representative, your senator, your governor, your mayor, their job is to represent your home, the streets in front of your house, the places where you live. They are captured. And it is almost a nightmare if you think about it. If you really put yourself into it, it kind of seems like a dream we can't wake up from. When the problems that we have are so real, so present, and so clearly in front of us. When we have real, actual problems. I've been trying not to bring this discussion back to this point as much as possible on the Ignition News, but on a day like today, threatening to kill journalists, turning people who protest against capitalism or Christianity, turning them into Antifa. These are the tactics that Netanyahu's government uses to suppress dissent. The weapons being used to gather information about us, to spy on us, to surveil us, these are weapons that were tested in the field in Israel. How do you know that the focus is there? I can very clearly draw a line to it. We're using the surveillance technology from companies that were developed in Israel. We are purposely not using Ukrainian anti-drone technology. Ukraine has 500 drone factories. They offered, even after everything we did to them, that horrible Oval Office meeting, Volodymyr Zelensky called and he said, you can use our drone technology. They offered it up to us. Of course, I'm sure we'd probably have to pay for it. I say, what is the harm? I would rather invest $200 million in supporting Ukraine, investing in and protecting our brothers and sisters in conflict right now, who, by the way, just shouldn't be there. The best thing the president could do right now is say, victory, come home, get the hell out of there. But even if he did that, by the way, we're still fucked. They're not going to reopen the straits. Iran has us over a barrel of oil. But if you want any proof of who's really driving this conversation, we are now using military technology developed by Israel to surveil United States citizens. We use that information to then criminally charge them as terrorists. The Antifa trials have begun. And an ally who needs our help, who has successfully, independently built from nothing 500 drone factories. You've seen these videos in Ukraine. The technology they've developed, it's stunning. And it's exactly the technology that we might need right now to counter and really it's just about protecting our brothers and sisters. To protect our brothers and sisters in the military who shouldn't be there. And we're refusing to take their offer. Not just are we refusing to take the offer, they ignored the phone call from Zelensky, who is currently battling Russia on his own, by the way. What more proof do you actually need? This war has no plan. It has no exit. This administration clearly did not account for this. They clearly did not plan for this. Now we're stuck in it. The president is talking now about going to Cuba. The Democratic Party is supposed to be in opposition to this. It is fracturing primaries all across the country over a foreign policy issue that Schumer has not yet woken up to, that Jeffries has not yet woken up to. And so, you know, people always want to know, what is your action step? If you are not voting against AIPAC money in your primaries, if you are not getting involved in your local elections and understanding who's running for your congressional seat, you know what's funny? Most people don't even know that. I'm trying to help out a little bit with some campaigns here where I live. And when I talk about it with people, all I'm doing right now is providing information. When I talk about it, people don't realize when their primaries are. We're about to be in our primaries here in Nevada. You probably have yours coming up as well. Vote these fuckers out. They are your enemies. They are anti-American. Retire these fuckers. They can go golf. They can go join the board of some Israeli defense firm. God knows they've earned it. There's a spot waiting for them, I promise you. Schumer retires, he's going to be sitting on some data firm, Palantir, some shit like that. They're not going to be hurting. Find them and vote them out of office. My God, would I love to see Hakeem Jeffries defeated in a primary? Can you imagine the power that you have as the working class? Well, there we go. Look at that. Your live is not eligible for recommendation and is restricted in search results for 10 minutes. Oh, some little baby reported us. Spectacular. I always have a choice to make when that happens. That's how you know you're being effective, by the way. This is what we're tracking, everyone. This is the battle. And I just proved the point. We just proved the point. Even as I was wrapping up the show, telling you as American citizens what you can do, what is legal, what is constitutional, what you have every right to do, what you have the protections that you have been given, the Constitution, as I'm just simply telling you, learn about your elections, vote in the elections, vote these fuckers out. And this app says, oh, you just violated our rules. Interesting. What a proof of concept. If that is not yet enough proof for you, I'm going to close out by saying this. Go to theignition.news, find our show on all of your favorite podcast platforms. Close the show where we started off. As a weed. It's Northwest Pole Project made this kick-ass inspirational video. They are going to try to silence us. They are going to try to arrest us. They are going to try to jail us. Apparently, they're going to try to say that we are treasonous. But there are more of us than there are of them. There are more sane, smart, moral Americans who understand what we are about, who have a backbone, who have a spine, who still have a sense of morality, and who understand that America, that our vision, our dreams, our hopes are not worth giving up, and especially not worth giving up in the interest of some foreign policy that doesn't materially impact our lives, except clearly to make it negative. This is a government operating without accountability, the collapse of an empire. But there is one more lever, and that is you, to go find who these people are, to go find when your primaries are, to go find who they support. Do they support you, or do they support a foreign country? Are they representing you or a foreign country? Or are they hiding for pedophiles? Are they covering up for pedophiles? These are not difficult questions. And let me give you a simple test. If you're looking at someone who to vote for, mayor, Congress, Senate, find out the page, go to their website, find out if they have a phone number. Give them a call. The candidate who answers your phone is probably worth looking into, because it tells you who they're actually interested in representing. If they're willing to answer your email or your tweet or your phone call, instead of worrying about a PAC, a foreign PAC, by the way, or foreign influence PAC, well, I think you should consider supporting them, knocking doors for them, making phone calls for them, telling your friends, your neighbors, and your family about them. That's the thing. They think that we don't understand our collective power. They think that we don't understand what we are capable of. They think that we don't know that we still have each other. They think that we are fools. But most importantly, they think that we are afraid. And they want you to think that you are alone. But that is the most important lesson of the day. You are not alone. Thank you very much, everybody. This has been a very lengthy episode of the Ignition News.